This is Elizabeth Thornton with the Family Justice Initiative. I see that many of you have joined and are joining the webinar. I'm going to give it until a minute or two after 3 p.m. Eastern, so we will be starting shortly. Thanks so much for joining. We will be starting in another minute or two, and thanks everyone for joining. Okay, I will get started. Hello, my name is Elizabeth Thornton, and I'm a staff attorney with the Family Justice Initiative. Thank you for joining today's webinar on pre-petition legal representation for parents and youth involved in the child welfare system. We had over 700 registrations, and we are very excited about all of the interest in this topic. As background, today we will be learning about legal representation that happens before the Child Welfare Agency files a petition to remove a child from the custody of his or her parents. Early pre-petition representation programs started by the Center for Family Representation in New York and the Detroit Center for Family Advocacy showed great promise in safely preventing children from entering foster care. Today, we will be hearing about 4 different programs focused on keeping children safely at home with their parents. Our wonderful speakers include Adam Balut from the Family Intervention Response to Stop Trauma Clinic, Lucia Murillo from the Children's Law Center of California, Michelle Jungers from Iowa Legal Aid, and Jay Rajaraman from Legal Services of New Jersey. This is a very exciting time to learn more about pre-petition work because now, thanks to the leadership at the Children's Bureau and recent changes to the Federal Child Welfare Policy Manual, federal 4E funding can be used to help support this sort of early legal representation. So before starting, I want to cover a few logistical items. First, please ask questions using the Q&A button. We will be reserving most questions until the end after all the presenters have spoken, although I will be reading the questions as they come in, and we may ask some specific questions between speakers. Second, if you send a chat through the chat button, be sure to check the audience you're sending it to. The default is just to presenters, but please feel free to send the chat to everyone, to all the audience members. I know everyone can benefit from seeing what people are thinking about. Finally, this webinar is being hosted by the Family Justice Initiative, which also goes by the FJI. The FJI is a national collaborative of children's and parents' attorneys, advocates, and academics who are all focused on ensuring that every child and every parent has access to high quality legal representation when courts make life-changing decisions about their families. The FJI's founding partners include the ABA Center on Children in the Law, the Children's Law Center of California, who we'll be hearing from today, New York Center for Family Representation, and Casey Family Programs. Today, the FJI's leadership team includes members from Washington State's Office of Public Defense, the ABA Center on Children and the Law, and the Children's Law Center of California. To learn more about the FJI and to access our resources, please visit our website, familyjusticeinitiative.org. We also invite you to go to the website and sign on to endorse FJI's mission to ensure that every parent and every child has high quality legal representation. Our goal is to get endorsements from attorneys, advocates, child welfare leadership, people with lived experience, social workers from all 50 states. We're getting very close to meeting that goal, and we do have a large audience today. So hopefully some of you can join in our mission and sign on to support the FJI. Without taking up too much more of your time, I want to get to the presentations, and we will start with Adam from Washington. Thanks so much.
Hi, thank you, everyone. My name is Adam Balut, and the program that I'm part of is the Family Intervention Response to Stop Trauma. The trauma being unnecessary separation of baby and mom at the hospital. And so in terms of trauma, that is really the focus of our clinic, is stopping that unnecessary removal. We know that PTSD among foster care is twice that of US war veterans. It's more than half, 54.4% have clinical levels of mental health issues such as depression. And so what we're trying to end is that unnecessary trauma. But what we do is once we receive a referral, our client base is any pregnant mom or new mom that is facing CPS involvement. And so we act as a rapid response model. Once we get a call into our clinic, our office runs a conflict check, and then our average response time is about 20 minutes until we're in contact with mom. We have a local partnership with a local hospital, and our office is about 5 minutes away. And so we're able to physically be present. And up until COVID, we were physically present for most of that first meeting. Now it's transferred over to video. And then our hope is that once things shift and get better, that we'll occupy a physical space in the lobby of our local hospital, our Providence Women and Children's Pavilion. So it'll have a high visibility in terms of parents seeing that, providers being able to refer to our clinic, and then we are able to help the family from there. In terms of how cases are referred, it can be referred from anyone. It could be referred from the department. It could be referred from a local drug and alcohol provider. Our clients' issues are typically substance abuse, homelessness. Housing is a big barrier for a lot of parents. And so our clinic brings with us not just legal advocacy, but also a veteran parent. Our veteran parent volunteer is Gina Wassermiller, and she's fantastic. So our first order of business is not just only contacting the client, but then connecting them with a veteran parent that's able to help transport them if needed to appointments, help set up a drug and alcohol evaluation. And we have a partnership with a local drug and alcohol treatment provider to streamline that process so that the assessment is coming to mom at the hospital instead of mom having to go out and get assessments and treatment. And so our model is to not just surround mom with legal advocacy, but also support, emotional support. I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with a TED Talk given by Dr. Michael Asher called "The Opposite of Addiction is Not Sobriety, It's Human Connection." And we believe that really passionately, that if we are surrounding moms, not just with legal support, but also somebody to talk to and figuring out what their supports are and what their emotional supports need to be, then that's the best recipe for success. Our interdisciplinary team works with not just the veteran parent, but also connects them to existing resources in the community. There's a nurse partnership that exists in our state. And so we help moms connect to that. That's a nurse partnership that comes out to mom and baby for the first 2 years of the child's life, which eliminates a lot of transportation barriers for mothers, and just that information about what to avoid, and sometimes a lot of fear about working with medical providers. There is a lot of fear about mandatory reporter bias. And so a lot of families avoid that care. A veteran parent is essentially a parent that's been through the CPS process before and has successfully reunited with their child, and now they coach other parents through the process. They can tell a parent, I've been through this before, and they can eliminate a lot of that hesitation that parents have working with the department, a lot of that fear that my prior interactions with the department have all resulted in me losing my child. Why is this going to be any different? And to help bridge that gap about trust that this is going to be different in this interaction, and this outcome will be different. And also that they're not going to meet with anyone alone. That's one of the biggest concerns that they have. They don't want to meet with people alone. And so you're now coming in and saying, you will never meet with anyone alone. And if someone comes to speak to you, just get me on the phone. Our clients have our cell phones. My other clinic partner is Neil Weiss from my office. And the genesis of this idea came from a summit that we attended, in which the results of the numbers of children that were picked up in our county were revealed. And the numbers were high, and they were higher than we expected. And that's not something that needs to happen in all cases. We have representation prior in private dependencies and private cases, and families that can afford to hire us and privately retain us. Their outcomes are drastically different than the families that we see when we do court-appointed work. We have contracts through the Office of Public Defense in our normal practice. And so we are at those 72-hour shelter care emergency hearings, reading these petitions. And for many years, essentially since 2007, have just been reading these over and over, feeling like if we could just be involved 3 weeks, 2 months, 1 week earlier in the process, these outcomes would be completely different. Moms do want to go to treatment with their baby. There is a bridge that needs to be overcome, and that can't just be done solely through single points of advocacy. I think that's where the interdisciplinary model comes up. The doctor I mentioned earlier was Dr. Michael Asher, and his TED Talk actually was the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's human connection. And I'm sure we can share that link as well. But that's been something that really impacted how we view this. And as you do this work, you're going to encounter people that will have some resistance to this. And then we're seeing a big shift in model between this idea that involvement in the child welfare system is therapeutic and rehabilitative versus punitive, and that addiction is some type of moral failing versus a health issue that should be dealt with support and through care and through love. Those are not typically things that get referred to. And then how we interact with the department. I'm proud to announce that the department is now going to be funding our clinic in our state. And so our interaction is now going to be dramatically different. We are going to be looking to get referrals much earlier in the process through working with pregnant mothers, not just mothers that have just given birth, but pregnant mothers that have either had prior CPS involvement or are worried about upcoming involvement. And one thing I would share just with everyone considering doing this in your state is that as you look to your clients and figuring out what their supports are, you can now try to figure out what potential supports can be mended, especially since you have time now to work. And you'd be surprised how many relationships can be mended, and then supports can be provided for moms. And if you have enough time, then you also are going to be able to put together a better perspective, not just for the client, but on paper about why the department doesn't need to be involved with this family and why a removal doesn't need to occur. There are other avenues such as third-party custody or guardianship that can be explored that don't involve removal of the child and don't involve that unnecessary trauma that would occur. And so in terms of outcomes, roughly about 78% of the mothers that we work with results in no filing of a dependency. And our hope is that as we continue to expand, as a physical presence is opened at our local hospital, that our numbers will continue to do better. The last thing I will throw out is tips. I will close with that. In terms of tips, is figuring out what the resources are already in your state. You don't need to recreate these, but you will need to connect partnerships. Our medical legal partners, the American Academy of Pediatrics. So special thank you to Sarah Rafton and Dr. Elizabeth Mead and Dr. Jeffrey Stolz there for partnering with us. That partnership specifically, our medical legal partnership, is to increase medical providers' awareness of a new mother's rights when they're living with opiate addiction. And through this partnership, we'll help new mothers bond with their babies and access legal resources and supports like treatment and housing during a critical window immediately following a child's birth. And the partnership is to decrease childhood trauma and family separation. So find your local Washington, or find your chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and let them know that you'd like to pursue medical legal partnerships. Contact your state provider. I'm part of the Office of Public Defense. Our director, Joanne Moore, has been fabulous about support. Jacob D'Annunzio, Amelia, Brett, everyone over there is supportive. So find your, if you have a statewide support, lean on them as well and ask what resources they have. IULTA, the funds that you get in your state, those can be tapped into for legal resources. And then lastly, KC Family Programs, and they've been instrumental in terms of providing funding to really capture some data as we move forward. So thank you to Ron Murphy and Rob Wyman. The Court Improvement Training Academy in our state is another resource that's helped us. So reach out to your state resources and see what they can do to help make this connection work. And good luck.
Thank you, Adam. I have two questions that came in, or several questions came in, but two that I thought would make sense just to ask right now. One is, do you only represent mothers, or do you ever represent fathers through the clinic?
Our model started only representing mothers, but it has opened to representing a father. We do also have conflict counsel, and we're looking at getting a conflict social worker as well. Yes, we do.
Great. And then the second question that I thought made sense to address right now is, can you just give a little bit of context for what a veteran parent is? We had a question come in about that.
Yes, a veteran parent is a parent that has had prior CPS involvement and has successfully reunified with their child. And now they come back and act as a coach and a support for other parents. And our statewide program, I believe, was implemented for veteran parents. They're also known as veteran allies. And so that's that term.
Great. Thank you so much. I will reserve the rest of the questions till the end or after some of the other speakers. And I will turn it over now to Lucia Murillo from the Children's Law Center of California.
Thank you, Liz. So Children's Law Center of California represents all the children in foster care in Los Angeles, Sacramento, and Placer counties. Our Prefiling Project focuses on the parenting and expecting youth clients who are non-minor dependents and CSEC youth in our Los Angeles office. LA County currently serves approximately 443 expectant and parenting clients, and approximately 27% of them have open cases as parents. CSEC youth are children who have been commercially sexually exploited. Our Prefiling Project attorneys are currently working with approximately 132 parenting and expectant clients who do not have open cases. Our goal is to identify those who we believe to be most at risk of experiencing DCFS intervention. So we receive referrals from the case managers and attorneys who are currently working with our clients once they identify that a risk factor is present. We also occasionally receive notice from emergency response social workers once a hotline referral has been generated. The issues that our clients are facing range from homelessness and housing instability, mental health issues, some of which are organic, some of which stem from the unresolved trauma they experienced as a child, substance abuse and use, lack of functional parenting role models, poverty, and intimate partner violence. And in the case of our CSEC youth, that can include maintaining a relationship with their trafficker. There was a question about how we have our clients in the first place. So we are representing those clients in their dependency cases as minors. That's how or non-minor dependents. That's how we have them in the first place. And then it will happen, some of them become parents, or they get pregnant, or they're expecting fathers. And then once we find out about that, then we start to try and wrap services around them to prevent DCFS being involved with them. So our team consists of attorneys and case managers who work very closely with the youth. Many of our case managers have lived experience in the foster care system or as CSEC youth themselves, and they're able to establish strong relationships with our clients. When a risk factor is identified, the case manager notifies the attorney and myself, and we sit down and problem solve to come up with solutions for the issues presented. Our team will request that an EPI conference be held if one hasn't already taken place. EPI stands for Expectant and Parenting Youth. The purpose of an EPI conference is to assist the youth in designing a parenting plan, as well as to identify areas where the youth might need additional support, and they can be held for the benefit of fathers and mothers. Our case managers will assist the youth in obtaining an early infant supplement, which is available only to youth in LA County during the 7th, 8th, and 9th months of pregnancy. That amount currently is $415. Our case managers will request and attend child and family team meetings. They will increase contact with the youth throughout the pregnancy, and they will assist in the development of a birth plan and connect the youth with a doula. They will also secure appropriate housing. That's one of the biggest issues that our clients are facing, and get them enrolled into infant care classes. In the event that our attorneys or case managers receive a notice of a hotline referral from an investigating social worker, the attorney will reach out to the social worker. In the best case scenario, the attorney is able to provide, to bridge the information gap, provide a big picture and background of the client in order to prevent the demonization of our client and normalize our client in the eyes of the investigating worker. In the worst case scenario, the emergency response worker refuses to talk to our attorney, in which case the case manager will reach out and try to bridge that gap. The case manager and attorney work very closely with the client to offer support, explain the process, and encourage frankness from the client in order to be able to take a proactive approach to the emergency response investigation. Our case manager will be present when the social worker comes out to the home to do a visit. Coming soon to our team is a post-bar fellow who will handle any document preparation and legal advocacy. And we're also about to onboard a dedicated parent support case manager. Currently, our parenting clients are working with their transitional age youth case managers or their CSEC case managers. Our parent support case manager will work exclusively with our high-risk parents. They will have weekly check-ins with the clients regarding their prenatal care and progress in reducing and eliminating any risk factors. They will link the youth to resources, and they will moderate a parents group, like a new parents group, where our clients can connect with others in similar circumstances and build a community of support. Now I'll talk a little bit about an EPI conference. An EPI conference is a conference designed to proactively identify and address the needs of any expectant or parenting youth under the supervision of the Department of Children and Family Services in LA County. The conferences are held on a voluntary basis, and they do require the consent of the expectant or parenting youth. The conferences include preparation, a written plan, and follow-up. And the follow-up can include a second or third EPI conference. The participants in an EPI conference can include child welfare and community support, such as an educational liaison, independent living program coordinator, a public health nurse, wraparound team, Department of Public and Social Services linkages, Department of Mental Health or the youth's therapist, a CASA, our CLC case managers, and a resource specialist whose job it is to link the youth with resources outside of the child welfare field. And of course, the youth is invited to engage their family members. We can have the expected or parenting youth, the other parent, their family members, non-related extended family members, legal guardians or caregivers, and significant friends on either the maternal or paternal sides. The benefits of an EPY are family planning, assisting the youth in placement stability and support for the youth and the baby, connecting the youth to prenatal care and a birth plan, engaging and promoting the support and involvement of the both sides of the family, the paternal and maternal sides, assessing the educational needs and developing an education plan, referring the young parents to a parenting education and mentoring programs, identifying family law issues, and even establishing what the paternity is, linking the youth to DPSS resources, as well as other resources, and providing ILP information and resources. ILP stands for Independent Living Program. The role of our legal advocate is to bridge the information gap between the referral and the client's current circumstances and how they got there, prepare restraining orders when necessary, explain to the client the ramifications of having someone sign the birth certificate as a parent, prepare a custody order when DCFS has concerns regarding the other parent, explain the ramifications of refusing to cooperate with the investigating agency, explain the ramifications of a petition being filed and the importance of preventing it, refer a client to outside agencies when necessary, and coaching the client on how to interact with the social worker, which is perhaps one of the most important roles. We interact, CLC interacts with DCFS at this stage in a very collaborative manner. The engagement at the EPYs is very collaborative. It's very there's a camaraderie really in the EPY. It seems like everybody's trying to figure out a way to support the youth and help them become successful parents, as well as in the CFTs. It's kind of a collaborative environment. We engage in non-confrontational conversations with the ER worker because, of course, we don't want things to escalate too quickly. And we also will follow up on any EPY action items with the DCFS social worker. And in terms of outcomes, I think my light is about to go out here. In terms of outcomes, I should preface this by saying our project formally got off the ground in January of 2020 due to a grant that we received from the Pritzker Foundation. However, our project attorneys have been working on a little more informal basis with our clients over the past at least 18 months. During that 18-month period, approximately, we prevented filings in approximately 9 cases. And we have had, our attorneys have picked up about 18 cases, parenting cases, when DCFS filed a petition. 8 of those open cases are currently home of parent, 10 are in reunification, and with drug addiction being the primary cause for removal in those cases. And I should note that we didn't have the opportunity to work in a preventive manner in all of those cases, as most of the time we didn't receive notice that an investigation was going on. And we receive our funding from a generous grant from the Pritzker Foundation, and we also are receiving some 4E funding. And that's my presentation.
Thank you so much, Lucia. Again, a lot of questions came in. I have two that are specific for you. I think, can you just define really quickly the CSEC youth? I believe it's commercially sexually exploited children, but I just wanted to be sure.
Yes, those are youth who have been the victims of human trafficking.
And then the EPY meeting, is that available to mothers and fathers?
Yes, it is. As soon as we have several male clients that we've assisted in getting an EPY conference for, but the early infant supplement is only available to the mothers, not to the fathers.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It was great to hear about the work and how it aligns with also what Adam's doing and working with, mothers who just had their kids. So I will now turn it over to Michelle Jungers with Legal Aid in Iowa.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, my name is Michelle Jungers. As you said, I'm the manager of the Waterloo office of Iowa Legal Aid. I also manage the Parent Representation Project here in Iowa. The Parent Representation Project in Iowa actually began, really got off the ground anyway, in 2013 and 2014. It began as a pilot just in Black Hawk County, which is where I am in Waterloo, Iowa. We began as a collaboration between the State Public Defender, the Iowa Children's Justice Initiative, which is our court improvement project, the Iowa Department of Human Services, and Iowa Legal Aid. Our project does use a multidisciplinary approach to working with parents and families who are involved with the Child Welfare Agency. So our project has a lawyer, a social worker, and a parent advocate, which obviously that word is used differently all over the country. Parent partner, they're sometimes called. I think Adam called it a veteran parent. Essentially someone who's been through the child welfare system with their own children, successfully navigated it, and can serve as a mentor to our parents that are referred to legal aid. Our project actually takes what we refer to as both pre-petition or pre-filing and post-petition. So we can represent using that team approach in both pre-petition cases and post-petition cases. So what that means for families is if we get it pre-petition, we can continue to represent them. We're not doing any kind of handoff. So our pre-petition work has sort of evolved over time. So our pre-petition work comes primarily from referrals from the Department of Human Services social workers. And that involves basically them sending us with a release on their part, the names and contact information for the person that they need to refer to us. And essentially the referrals they send to us are for families or clients with a civil legal issue, and our assistance would help to either lessen the chances of juvenile court involvement or further stabilize the family to decrease the chances that they're going to have future child welfare involvement. We have been fortunate here in my county to receive just very recently some additional private funds to be able to expand, but that's very much in its infancy at this point. Some examples of the types of cases that are referred to us are protective orders for victims of domestic abuse. Just here recently, we've had a number of, unfortunately, sexual abuse cases where the police might be investigating, but there's been a founded child abuse assessment. So helping the identified safe parent get a sexual abuse protective order to protect their kiddo. We also help with public benefits appeals cases. keeping people on Section 8 or public housing. Obviously, for our parents, the loss of their Section 8 benefit, Section 8 voucher, or the loss of public housing can be detrimental to being able to keep kids at home. We also assisted with landlord-tenant cases, so where their landlord really should be the one making some repairs. Or here recently, with the CDC's declaration, helping people who are now not able to pay their rent navigate that system and make sure they don't end up in eviction court. But we also assist with modification of custody orders where one parent is determined to be safe, but without modifying that custody order, they're going to have to file a petition, a child in need of assistance petition. That's what we call it here in the state of Iowa. What's really great about using the team, even in those pre-petition cases, is that my social worker, the child welfare agency is involved, but that social worker that's on our team is also able to help them get the services in place for kids, the services in place for mom or for dad, whoever happens to be referred, to not only help them in that moment but to keep them from coming back into the child welfare system. The parent advocate is very beneficial as well. In Iowa, we have, once your children are removed, we have a parent partner program, but the parent partner is not available for someone when they just have the child welfare involved in their life. Our parent advocate is available and is on our team, employed by legal aid, and can maintain that confidentiality that's so important, especially when we're having some of those very difficult conversations. The client might be referred to us and maybe doesn't want to take the route that their worker is thinking they should go. And we can have that confidential and difficult, crucial conversation and then be their advocate back with the department to say, this client is driving the bus and here's kind of what here's how we're advocating for her. Here's what we think this family needs to be successful. In terms of outcomes, we have actually had very few cases that have been referred for assistance to our office actually end up with a juvenile court filing or a child in need of assistance filing. We also have seen that the rates of reabuse and reentry of those families that were referred for our assistance is much lower than the district-wide average. And I guess in terms of the evolution of the project that we have here in Iowa, I think I said we first started out in Black Hawk County, and the funding that we received at that point was seed money from our court improvement project, the Children's Justice Initiative. At that point, we were able to take just some of the initial success and go to some private grant funding sources. And currently, we are funded by, primarily the pre-petition work is funded almost exclusively by private grant sources. And we here in Iowa have been very fortunate to have just a wonderful champion of our work. Well, just the collaboration has continued to be wonderful. But our newest state public defender, Jeff Wright, has really, having been a parent attorney before coming to his current position, a bill was passed in Iowa that will allow his office to implement some pre-petition projects in 6 additional counties in Iowa. Previously, the state public defender could only use funds for work in juvenile court. So pre-petition work could not be funded. So what would happen prior to this, or what is happening currently, is that our office would potentially take a pre-filing or pre-petition referral that was funded by a private resource. And then if it ended up in juvenile court, the state public defender, we have a contract with them for that work. But we're pretty excited here in Iowa. There's a lot of momentum, I think, well, obviously as across the entire nation, but that we have a lot of champions here in Iowa who really see the benefit of this work and of keeping families together, keeping kids safe. We currently have 4 counties that are through Iowa Legal Aid in Iowa. So we were able to expand in 2018 to 3 additional counties. So right now 4, and we're kind of in the, Mr. Wright, the public defender, is in the works and figuring out how to kind of move forward with some more pre-petition projects. So exciting stuff. Tips on if someone else is starting this, talk to other people. I've always, said I'm more than willing to talk to people about hiccups we've had along the way, but I did this, I reached out to Detroit when they were, the Detroit Center when they were still working, and we worked a lot with them just so that we weren't making the same, mistakes that they made, and that so we weren't reinventing the wheel, actually. So talk to other programs, find out what is going to work in your state, because one thing that we found early on was that what works in Waterloo, Iowa is maybe not what works in Detroit all the time, partly because we're just small. I mean, we're a small community. So yeah, just talking to a variety of different places that are doing things differently and have kind of different models. And then also know the workers, having good relationships with them and helping them understand your role. So in the beginning, myself and my first case manager that we hired on, we went to a lot of, we just kind of asked to be invited to a lot of the meetings at the department here locally, so that we could meet their workers and explain to them who we are, what we do, how it's going to be helpful for them. But then at the same time, we were very clear that when a referral is made to our office, their input is fine, but the client sitting in front of me is who I work for. And I'm, truth be told, that was a growing process, a bit of a growing pain, because, lawyers and social workers, it can be an adverse process, obviously, and it should be sometimes. But I think that we have a really good relationship with them now, and we both understand that I have a job to do and that I am going to zealously advocate for my client. And then many times we're all on the exact same page, and we're helping, get whatever civil legal issue it is resolved, which, at the end of the day, I think most workers want to help families, and that's what we're all trying to do together.
Thank you so much, Michelle. We did have we had, again, several questions that came in, a lot that we were reserving for the end, but 2 questions that I think are sort of specific to you is, do you represent clients in administrative appeals of abuse and neglect findings when there's no juvenile court case?
So that's, we wouldn't probably have gotten a referral for that issue, right? They're not going to send that case to us. As an office, though, I mean, I have staff attorneys who are not part of the project. So yes, but we have criteria that they have to meet. It usually includes like that it has to somehow impact their ability to work, and obviously it has to have merit. So so yes, we have outside of the project. That usually would be handled by one of my staff attorneys. So.
Okay, and then one other question that came in that's Iowa specific is, how many cases are you handling generally in each sort of jurisdiction where you're working on this project?
It's kind of hard to say, I guess, because some of our attorneys are much younger, and so like I might be able to take a lot more cases than somebody who's maybe just graduated from law school. So I will say, in just my office in Waterloo, I think between pre and post cases we get roughly 8 a month. Okay. So, and that's one full-time equivalent attorney, roughly.
Great. So thank you so much. I'm going to reserve the remaining questions until the end and turn it over to Jay with Legal Services in New Jersey. Thanks. Michelle.
Hi, thanks, Liz. Thank you for having me. And I'm really thrilled to talk about this work. I love this work. For someone who's done litigation for over 15 years and representing parents, kin, and children in child welfare matters, to now do pre-petition or prevention work is what we call it in New Jersey. It's been remarkable to really serve these families. And so just some context, Legal Services of New Jersey has been around for over 50 years. And throughout the years, we've provided pre-petition work. As we've called it, we say prevention. So families would call LS&J or come to our office and say, the agency, the division's knocking on my door. I don't know what my rights are. I don't know if I should sign this release, or do I have to do a drug test? Or if I'm evicted, will they remove my children? So we started this process and advocacy policies on know your rights, what to do, what to expect when you're involved with the child welfare agency. And we would go further and advocate for them. We would reach out to the caseworker, the area director, up to the commissioner if necessary, saying, look, we have this family member who's worried that if she decides not to sign this release to her psychologist, that her children may be taken. Or if she doesn't pay rent for next month, she might lose her children. These were the questions we were getting. And we would advocate and say, look, this is not appropriate. This is not abuse or neglect under the law. And they shouldn't feel threatened or uncomfortable or scared working with your agency. And throughout the years, we've had a great relationship with the agency, and the commissioner and assistant commissioner say, yep, let's look into it, investigate, try to support the family and resolve these issues before getting to court. And what changed over 2 years ago was that the new commissioner and new changes in the system provided a similar call. I reached out to the assistant commissioner. It was a housing issue. And she said, I'll look into it. And she's like, you know what? We get tons of these cases. We have so many families who are about to be evicted or lose their benefits or have a domestic violence issue or about to be deported. And we have nowhere to send these families, and we don't need to actually intervene or send them to the child welfare system or file an application, but they do need ancillary legal services and assistance. And I said, sure, I would love those calls, send them our way. So she sent out a statewide alert. And I clearly remember this, it was on a Wednesday, and by Friday, we received 30 referrals from one county. And some perspective, I believe the Michigan model, which we worked really closely with, had like 60 cases within like 3 years. And this is like 30 cases in 2 days. And it just kept growing from there. So we realized quickly that we had to come up with a system to serve this need. So the majority of our referrals now are directly from the agency, from a handful of counties, but we are statewide. And the agency caseworker will refer them usually by email or phone call saying they're at risk of removal because of the lack of housing, or they're facing domestic violence, or they have an immigration issue, benefits, tax issue, consumer. Right now, tons of unemployment due to COVID. We receive those cases, and within 24 hours, we do an intake. We assign an attorney to the case, and then we assess all the legal issues that are connected to this case. We also always have a family advocate who is assigned to the child welfare issue to continue to communicate back and forth with the child welfare agency. Similar to Michelle's, where we'll say, thank you for the referral, but now this is a client attorney privileged conversation. This is confidential. We may not return back to you. But what we've learned is that because the agency is still providing services and assistance and is involved and has an open case, we often will return back to that caseworker and involve that caseworker in the planning to support the family. We really try to change the way the prevention pre-petition world looks like. It's a different way of trying to challenge the agency to support this family versus threatening to remove or being at risk of removal. And that's really been the big game changer here in New Jersey. We're up to 200 cases within 2 years. We also have a multidisciplinary system and team. So we have our social workers, we have a parent ally as well who had 3 of her own personal cases, and she fought termination and was able to regain custody of her 3 children. And she was also a child in the system, and her rights to her mother were terminated. So she knows personally what it was to be a foster child and also as a parent. And she's been extraordinary, exceptional, and with our, not only with guiding and supporting our parents, but she's also been able to develop policy and assistance better so we can serve our families in a more effective way. In addition to the social workers and our parent allies, we have interpreters and we're legal services. So the benefit is we have the other units involved in our cases. So we have a housing unit, we have a domestic violence unit, so forth, immigration, unemployment, benefits. So when we were in the office, I could literally just yell down the hallway to help me in these emergency cases. And it's these advocates who will quickly reach out to the landlord or the eviction housing attorney or the court system to sort of advise and assist that family really quickly and immediately to resolve that legal issue. And then we would reach back to the agency, look, we've resolved this issue, but we need you to continue to support this family. And some of the examples that are common that we see often on a daily basis is that is really housing. So just to note some of the data points is that close to 80% of the referrals sent to us are identified as risk of losing housing or unstable housing. And then what we've noticed, actually, it's closer to 90% when we actually do our own intake, we realize that many of these families have unstable housing. And so we'll have an pending eviction complaint, and we'll have the housing attorney represent this individual in court. And we learn that there's many defenses in this complaint, and it's completely illegal. There's no way they can owe this level arrears because it's public housing. And we're able to defeat that complaint and stabilize the housing, or say back to the division, look, it's not $10,000 in arrears, it's actually $1,000, and there's all these defenses. Can you help assist and stabilize this family? And the division is quite happy to do that. They're actually like, this is a family we want to invest and support. We don't want them to lose housing, especially if it's public housing, because if you lose public housing, you'll never get back on public housing. It affects your credit, and you're actually identified as someone who cannot qualify in the future. This is common with benefits as well. So we have had many cases where our clients don't have the concrete needs or ability to submit documents. So we're just submitting documents on their behalf within 24 hours, so their application's completed or their services identified and resolved pretty quickly. So that are things that we just know, it's as attorneys and advocates, we can find the regulation quickly. We know who the person is in the welfare office, and we just immediately resolve that issue and let the agency know that this is not an unstable family. It's just a family that's struggling through poverty and doesn't have the needs or means to resolve that issue. And this is what we see on a daily basis. Change of custody has happened. Again, immigration, these are just topics that we hit on a daily basis. And it's been remarkable. Out of the 200 cases, we've not had any pre-petition filings. We've not been involved in the court system. And as I just looked up, it's over 300 children have remained safely with their families. I also want to note that this is a way we feel in New Jersey that have really stressed and put emphasis how to affect the racism in New Jersey. We have a disproportionality and disparity problem where 3 times more likely children of people of color will be removed, remain in foster care, and less likely to be returned. And this is a way that these families are not entering the system, right? And we're keeping people of color and their families together in a stable and safe way, and a way that they're actually dictating their narrative and serving their needs. They feel like they're empowered and they're guiding what they need in their story. And it's just been incredible the way we've been able to partner with the agency and effectively sort of solve these problems without ever feel like they're being policed or the intervention of the court system. I just want to note also, doing this work has made me a much better effective litigator on the removal side, because now I'm really aware of what resources are available to these families. I actually know what the agency can do, where funding goes. I understand budgets much better. I know what housing availability exists. I know what the barriers are. And it's just so important to know this. So when you're making arguments or trying to understand reasonable efforts or those post-litigation moments, it's really important to understand what's available in pre-petition world, just to extend your knowledge and your advocacy. So I highly recommend doing this work. Just some tips is that really just jump in. Like I said, we just kind of fell into it. It was like one email and then it was blast off, and we haven't stopped. We haven't, looked back because it's such effective work. And it's a lot. It's absolutely a lot. We do have a large team and we have access to our legal services community, but a lot of the work is just quick phone calls, emails, letters, just not missing the issue and trying to resolve it as effectively and quickly as possible. So I really encourage people not to be afraid of doing pre-litigation work. We didn't have any funding. And at one point it was just 3 of us, and we've grown because of the commitment of our director in legal services. But it's just incredible work that you can do without much work in the sense of like resources and time. You can really resolve a lot of these issues with just trying to pinpoint the legal issue and barrier. And as an attorney, we can really do that. And with the team system, we can really do that.
Thank you so much, Jay. I loved hearing about everyone's programs, and we have a lot of questions that have come in, and I've been writing them down and trying to keep track of them. So I will just go through and ask each of you, and maybe directing the questions to some of you, but if each of you can kind of answer and give your perspective. So one question that we got is, maybe I'll start with an easy one. What is the average caseload of the attorneys who are doing this pre-petition work? I don't know, Jay, do you want to start with that?
Sure. So we run maybe 30 to 35 cases, and I will try to absorb more cases. Similar to Michelle, if I see younger staff or newer attorneys doing this work, I'll take on more of these cases. But and it will range. It'll go back and forth. Sometimes we get a lot of referrals. Like when COVID started, we were getting like 2 to 3 new cases per day. But the turnaround is quick because you're these are fires that you're putting out pretty quickly. So the turnaround moves, and it's not like litigation or trial or hearing. It's really trying to resolve the legal issue. And we defer to our other units. And if you don't have other units, we also work with our bar or pro bono attorneys who will want to take a DV or housing in a case, just to note that as well. So you can access community resources and other attorneys who want to volunteer and do this work.
Great, thanks. And Michelle, I know you kind of already answered this, but Adam and Lucia, I would love to hear what your guys' caseloads are.
Well, our situation at Children's Law Center is a little bit unique because the attorneys that are working on the project have existing dependency caseloads already. So the non-minor dependent attorneys are currently representing average about 250 clients each. They're expecting and parenting clients for each caseload is probably about 25 to 30. However, not all of those parents are identified as being high risk. So we try to, figure out which ones are high risk and which ones we need to refer to the project. Our CSEC clients, our CSEC attorneys carry their max caseload, I believe, is 60. We have 3 CSEC attorneys. But again, not all of their clients are expectant or parenting. So I'd say maybe their average is about 5 to 10 who are parenting or expecting. But again, not all of those are identified as high risk. So that's why it's so important that we are about to onboard the dedicated post-bar fellow who will be able to devote all of his time to whatever pre-petition work needs to be done, as well as the parent support case manager, because the normal TAE and CSEC case managers have a lot of other clients that they're working with and can't always focus just on the parenting youth, although those cases do take a lot of work.
Great, thanks. And Adam?
Thank you. What we've seen is obviously COVID has affected our caseloads, but prior to that, we've had active cases, and then we're representing pregnant mothers as well. And so in terms of ones that are active, probably 6 at any given point in time. And our referrals have also jumped as our referral partners have changed. But I want to say something about the race equity data, because that's a question that came up, and that is something that we're tracking. And we're also seeing that there's race equity in the referrals that we receive. And so that's as we continue to work with DCYF and expand our partnership, we're hoping to actually be serving the populations that we're hoping to. We're seeing that nationally the rate of white children entering care is going down, while Black and Latino children, their rate is going up. So we are tracking that data.
Great, thank you so much, Adam. Another question that's come in sort of from several people is the role of 4E funding that can now be accessed for legal representation. Are any of you using the 4E funding? And then relatedly, if you are getting 4E funding through an agreement with the agency, how do you address client confidentiality, or does receiving that money have any impact on client confidentiality? So I don't know, Jay or Michelle, if you guys want to start with that.
Yeah, I can. I know that there are conversations happening at a state level on 4E funding, but I don't unfortunately have any specific information about that. We are not getting that at this point. But we have a small grant that we get through decategorization funding, which is through the Department of Human Services, and we're very clear in that contract that all of our information is confidential. There's nothing that we share. Like I said, it's just been very clear that I think once, like we said earlier, once that client is our client, the path that case takes is really driven by the client that was referred and is sitting in front of us. And that's key, because otherwise, how do you gain the trust of somebody sitting in front of you if really it seems like you're working for the system? So.
Right, we don't receive any 4E funding. We are exploring it. But as to the confidentiality, similar, we are clear that this is a legal office and your referral stops there, and we will continue our relationship, and that's protected legally and and morally to our client. And then there was a question, I think, about mandatory reporters as well. And, that is something we do take seriously. In New Jersey, everyone's a mandatory reporter, and there's lots of complexities there. But again, those are role of professional conducts that govern that, and ethics that govern that if there needs to be a report. But otherwise, there's no onus on us to report back to the agency or concerns out that is added to what's already existing legally. And we make sure that's clear. We know that with direct referrals, there's email exchanges between us and the caseworker now. And we have a system in place where I often will speak to the supervisor, and the advocates and the attorneys will work with the social workers or caseworkers who are directly involved with the family. And if there's issues, we both kind of have a reporting system, sort of work it out together so everyone feels comfortable. And we have social workers, which make a big difference if that social worker is talking to the agency social worker to sort of protect the client's needs. But what I find here, without it being in litigation, there's no artificial timeframes. There's no pressure of like what's going to be reported at the next court hearing. It's this commitment to supporting the family. Like, we really want to stabilize the family. And I know if I'm getting a referral, they're a team family. It's in that email to me. It's like, how do I help this family? And sometimes it's honest. They're like, I really don't want to remove, but I don't know how much more we can pay for their shelter or hotel. And we say, well, look, if you actually do this letter, we can get them benefits, and it's just a little bit longer, or we can appeal this. Like, it's giving them solutions, and it's much more confident building and changes the environment. So we don't run into some of the the legal concerns that come up because there's no litigation. So it's just like a different positive place doing this work.
Thank you. And then Lucia and Adam, another question that has come up from several people is, which Jay, you also addressed this, but for your case managers who are part of the team, how do they handle mandated reporting?
So our case managers are employees of the law office, and because they are an extension of us, of their lawyer, of the client's lawyer, they are not mandated reporters.
Great.
That is the same for us.
Okay, great. So another question that's come in from several folks is, how are you evaluating the impact of your program? Do you have any sort of quality improvement programs in place? Are you keeping track of your data and outcomes? And then Adam, I think you addressed this a little bit, but are you also looking at race or issues around race as you do that evaluation work?
So yes, we are tracking that data. We're hoping one of the requests that we've made in our grant requests is some technical assistance and also some program management assistance around specifically what data to gather, what to look for, and what and how to best do that data analysis. There was a study in New York, I'm sure a lot of people are potentially familiar with this, where they removed the race from pickup order requests and saw a drastic change in courts granting that when there were essentially race blind petitions submitted to the court. And so, as we move upstream, we're trying to show critically where those disparities are occurring.
Great, thanks. And I don't know, Jay, Michelle, and Lucia, do you have any, I think Jay, you have some initial data on child welfare involvement after representation, and then Michelle and Lucia, I would love to hear if you guys do too. So Jay, I don't know if you want to start.
Sure. So we've been tracking data points, including who's referring, which county, and things that I find interesting is what is being identified as the reason for the referral. And then when we do our own intake, the other issues that come up or things that the family may identify that they feel is a legal need. We track race and background, LGBTQI issues, the ages, gender. Again, majority of our referrals are single Black and Hispanic mothers. And then the legal issues have been a large part of it. And then tracking other things that have come up, timelines has been really important too, to see how long from the referral to securing housing, and really the family saying that they're self-identifying as feeling stable and supported. Again, we let the family serve and guide. Things that we never measure is like, what's your plan or management or things that feel artificial. We don't just close cases either. I mean, so cases last a long time, but we really want to remain open and supportive for families. It's not been an undue burden by any means by doing that. And looking like where we assign our parent ally, if there's more social worker needs, those are things that we take into account.
Great, thanks. And Michelle or Lucia, do you want to say anything about evaluation or program improvement or outcome tracking?
Sure. So we track a lot of data, actually, just as a program. I'm not sure we really dig into all the demographics, frankly, that we could. But for this project in particular, we actually track reabuse and reentry. So after our case closes, we yearly kind of work with the department to determine the percentage of those families that they referred to our program who ended up re-entering the child welfare system. And our numbers thus far have been far lower than what the district-wide average is. And then of course, we also track the number of people who end up after a referral in juvenile court. I will say though that it's sort of as an evolving project, something that we've talked about is how many referrals are coming to us that are potentially disproportionately or don't represent the population where we live. So here in Waterloo, we have the highest percentage of African Americans, yet at the referrals we get really don't play that out, which is really why we think it will be important to allow some self-referrals to the project. I just got an email today actually that in our area, 40% of referrals for family foster care are for families of color, and this seems a bit shocking. It's something that we as a project in our different counties have definitely been talking about ways that we can improve that.
Great, thanks.
And for CLC, since our project is so new, our outcomes, our results are still, we're in the process of tracking everything. We are in LA County taking steps to address the racial disparities that we see in the dependency system. Our attorneys do represent the youth while they have an open parent case, if they have an open parent case, until the case is closed. If they don't have an open parent case, our attorneys represent them until their dependency case is done. And then if they come back as an adult parent, then they are picked up. They're represented by Los Angeles dependency lawyers.
Great. So another question that we got that I think is very relevant is how we are including parent perspective in both these conversations like this webinar, as well as in the work that you do in each of your programs. In terms of the webinar, we were hoping to include some parents who are part of the Prepetition legal team with lived experience, and the timing didn't work necessarily for them to join, but I think that is something that we always should be and always need to be aware of and be thoughtful about. Jay, Michelle, Lucia, and Adam, maybe if you could each just talk a little bit about how parent perspective is incorporated into your work.
So it's our complete our start, our heart of the program. I think we sort of built this up from a parent's perspective, right? So like I said, things that we hear often or parents will say to us like, oh, the caseworker asked what my plan is, or how is this sustainable? Like things that no one should ask a poor person struggling who's homeless with this, nothing that's realistic and completely heartbreaking. And we say, what do you need? What are we supposed to do to serve you? Like we always start with the parent perspective. And then with Aisha on board, Aisha has both the child perspective and how she always looked for her mother everywhere. She would go to places in Newark and like they hope to run into her. And so we hold that dearly. We understand what it means to keep a family safe. And then hearing their perspective on what's guiding, like if they tell us, I really am worried about housing and not domestic violence, or I need to do this first and not this, that guides us. So just every initial point, I think Michelle had hit on a point that we've still work on is that this is often a referral from the agency. And so the parent, when we get them on the phone, they're like, yeah, like what more, another hoop, another hurdle. And so we have to build trust quickly and to say, look, we believe in you. We're going to keep your family safe. What you tell us right now will not be revealed to the caseworker. And that is like within like an hour, we have to get that done so we can get onto the real issue and try to make sure that they're not being evicted or lose their benefits. So it's so important for us to lead with the parent and listen and then respond respectfully. So it's not, it's the basis for everything we do. And I think when we also hold the agency accountable. So if they're saying things to the parent, we'll go back and say, you're promising this a food card, or you're promising this an assistance. So that's where we keep that relationship going, because that shows the parent that we're actually advocating on every level and just not the ancillary legal issue.
Great. I don't know if anyone else wants to address that.
I don't think it can be overstated just how important that the parent component is. In one of our first meetings at the hospital, and Gina was there, our veteran parent, and some ideas were being tossed around the table about what resources would work. And it was really moving to hear her say, when I was using and I was coming into the hospital, I wouldn't speak to you, but I would talk to an attorney because I knew that it was confidential. And so it is completely built around the parent model and the parent view. And the relentless energy that they bring is unmatched. And so that partnership is essential to success, I think, regardless of where you are. Find your veteran parent, your parent ally, a parent that's been through the process before, and partner with them and grow this clinic with them if possible.
Great. So I know Michelle and Lucia, you probably both have a lot to say about this too. We are running out of time, or getting close to running out of time, and we have a couple more questions that I want to get to. So I will move to the next question, which is coming from a few different ways, which is that these programs sound great and really exciting, but how is the work that you're doing or that the team is doing different from what the caseworker for the agency should be doing? Like, why does being part of a legal representation team make the difference? And how is this different, or not just duplicating the efforts of the caseworker? So maybe Lucia and Michelle, if you want to answer that, that one. And then Adam and Jay too, if you have anything to add.
So our clients are, they're all kids in the system themselves, or non-minor dependents in the system. So we have to, first of all, get them to think of themselves as parents, because, we have to tell them, okay, you are no longer looked at as a kid. Once you become a parent, they are looking at you as a parent, and they're not going to be so nice to you as they've been, in your kid case. So, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Can you repeat the question, Liz?
Oh, it was, I'm sorry. The question was, how is what you're doing different from what the case agency should do?
Right. Okay. So,
yeah.
So we are, of course, we have a history with our clients. We have a strong, hopefully, a very strong rapport with them. And, DCFS doesn't necessarily have that relationship with them. Plus, they have their own agenda. Their agenda is to, see the look at the baby and say, what do we need to do to protect this baby? And, do we need to, it seems like sometimes there's a knee-jerk reaction because our clients are already in the system. They're hyper-focused. The DCFS is hyper-focused on their parenting abilities. So we are trying to support them more. And we find that it's not always the case here in Los Angeles County that they are being supported by DCFS once they become parents.
Great. And Michelle, do you want to answer that one too?
Sure. That's I would say a question that we got a lot when we started, which is, isn't this a duplicate service? And the answer I would give is similar. When their parents come to get referred to us, we are able to have a confidential relationship with them and explain to them, like, we are your team. You might have felt scared, frankly, to be open about the things that are happening within your family. And our parents know they can come to us and say, so here's what's going on, and not be worried that it's going to be written down and used against them somewhere. And we can say, all right, here's our suggestions. You're in a new relationship. Let's talk about that. Let's see, let's run the background check. And they might not feel like they could talk about those things with anybody else, and get the real services that they need without being judged. And again, like I said, the confidentiality is key, and them knowing that we are their team and we're here to help them. We're here to help the parent. We don't have any other, ulterior motives. We're not looking out for everybody's interest in this. It is just the person sitting in front of us.
And then we got a little further follow up, and maybe Jay, I'll pass this one to you, but by doing this work, are you somehow letting the agency off the hook for what they should be doing in terms of reasonable efforts, or that was sort of
right? Where I always go, right? So I think I share in what was said about the duplication. What I hear from caseworkers and why we're getting referrals, and keep in mind, we're a defense attorney, we represent parents for 15 years. And if we're still getting cases weekly, we're doing something right because we're sharing the commitment to stabilizing this family. And I have to say, I love some of these caseworkers, and I never thought, honestly, I would say that. I believe in their commitment and what they're capable of doing. Unfortunately, like myself, I only know child welfare and a little bit of housing, a little bit entitlements. These are caseworkers that don't have access to legal information or advocacy on housing, entitlements, domestic violence, and they can't go to their attorney because their attorney is empowered to remove and police the family, right? That's the intervention. So when they're going to their attorney general saying, I don't know if they will get evicted, the attorney general's answer sometimes is, well, that might be a reason to remove. They're thinking differently and they don't have the access to this information. What we're doing, we're supplying that legal information and advocacy on an issue that both sides feel that this family should not be facing alone. And so just providing them legal access, the commitment to pre-litigation attorneys is just incredible. I mean, who doesn't want an attorney for everything you're doing in life? Like, that's really what we're doing. And we're, accessible and available, and we're committed to that family. So that's, I think, the biggest thing is that I've joked about this before. There's a regulation that if you have an agency involved family, that is an exception to losing housing and welfare benefits. A lot of states have this, but the division doesn't know this, the child welfare agency doesn't know this, and welfare doesn't know this. And so we're like, here's the regulations, literally a form letter that we send out daily that provides those benefits to that family. We support that family and we connect them. We have had administrative law judges say, I can't believe their caseworker showed up with court just by their support of the caseworker. And the caseworker is like, I'm so glad you told me to go with them because now they have their benefits. Like, just tying those loose ends and the legal advocacy is just not available right now to the agency. And so we provide that. So it's not a duplication. It's things that, is making accessible for the families. And like I said, for reasonable efforts, what I now know, I think there's a lot of our clients' lives are complicated and complex, absolutely. But when I find now that when we go to litigation, if there is a removal and I look at a complaint, I see one paragraph that's dealt with poverty or housing, now doing this work, I know the majority of work was on that. That was the issue. And that was likely the trigger for the removal. So I'm working much harder and more effectively pre-removal, and I also will hold them to task now post-removal because I am aware of what's available. We just don't have access to that information. That's positive. That's a good thing to know, and for judges to know, because I think a lot of judges or the court system will think, well, the family had an open case for a year with the agency. That must mean they've been working together. But that's not always true. And it's not always the agency's fault. There's limitations to a lot of different things. But now I personally know that I know how the system works in a much more effective way.
So we are getting close to the end of our hour and a half. And I want to say to all the attendees, thank you so much for your questions. There have been a lot, and I'm glad that everyone is so engaged. And I apologize that I do not think that we're going to get to them all. We only have 7 minutes left. And we did get one question that I think will be a good question to sort of wrap up this presentation, which is, if you were going to spread pre-petition work nationally, what are the 3 to 4 top things that you would recommend be done to spread that work, or to make it easier to do this? What are some of the, I guess, top 3 recommendations you would make to people who are looking into doing this, and then to, I guess, leaders who might have the ability to really push this work forward and get it out to a broader, so that more people get the benefit of this pre-petition representation.
I'd say to keep in mind that the social work component really is important, like having a parent partner or a case manager who can connect with the client on a level other than what they're used to with the attorney. I think that helps a lot.
Great. I don't know, Adam, Jay, or Michelle, do you guys have any suggestions about spreading this work and what can be done?
I would say just jump in, not to be afraid to do it. If you're representing families, children, or parents on the litigation side, you're really in a place to do it, or do pre-petition work and partner with your local legal services, the bar, pro bono. Like I said, even pre-COVID, a lot of our work involved emailing, letters, and phone calls, and just working at speed versus really heavy litigation. So don't be afraid. And yes, it's incredible if you have a social worker and a parent ally. I think that will contribute to a better work product for sure.
Michelle or Adam, is there anything you want to add?
I would say know what you want to track. So yes, like Jay said, jump in. It is great. I love doing this work. I love working with these families. But at the outset, know what information you want to track and know what information key stakeholders are going to want to know, because at the end of the day, these projects aren't going to happen without, you know, those key stakeholders knowing the benefits of doing this work beyond just helping families, but it's keeping families out of the system, and being able to demonstrate that what you're doing is having that outcome.
And reach out to your network. I think you'll be surprised how many medical connections you might already have just through your cases that you've worked in the past, and how many are already heading that direction. So I think there's a momentum in the medical community to partner with the legal community if we're open to it, and if we're ready to put some volunteer time in as well. Neil and I volunteered to do this because we know it's going to work, and we know that the data that we collect will show that it's going to work. And please reach out if you guys have questions. We'd love to be a support in any way that we can.
Great. So we have 4 minutes left, but I know there are questions that we could not get to, and I apologize for that. I want to thank all of the panelists for talking about for the work that you do, for volunteering your time to be a part of this webinar, and for letting us all learn from what you're doing. It's been great, and I'm excited by how engaged everyone is in the audience. If you are, well, first I want to say that we will be sending out some follow-up materials to all of the attendees. A couple of people have asked for the panelists' websites and more program information. So we will be getting that out on the page that we send out. Another question that we got, which we haven't been able to address, is whether there's a manual or sort of a how-to in terms of setting something like this up. I don't know if any of you are working on that. If you could let me know if you are, that's also something that we might be following up with you through the Family Justice Initiative. And yeah, I just want to thank everyone, thank the audience for questions. We will be sending up follow-up materials, and yeah, thanks for the work you do and for joining us today. So I don't know if anyone has any wrap-up things that they want to say from the panel. Otherwise, we will end the program, probably right at 2:30 or 4:30 or a minute before.